Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Hey. Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets. I am Karl Bryan. I'm here with my boy, Road Dog. Road Dog, you with me?
How are you, bud?
I'm doing fabulous. Ready to rock and roll, man. So tell me about the week, dude. Do we get some questions? You got something lined up for me? What are we doing here today, boss?
Yeah, absolutely. As per usual, we always have tons of questions, but one that just came up, which I think is fantastic. And actually, this is a great one. Gatekeepers. Like, we're just going to dive right in here. So, like, gatekeepers. How do you get past the gatekeeper to the decision maker? Like, do you have any tips or tricks there in terms of just like getting them out of the way so you can actually get down to business?
Yeah. So, look, a little bit of research is where this is going to make your job significantly harder. But prior to doing it, so depending upon where you're going to get your list, but let's assume that you got a newspaper, right? You open it up and there's 50 ads in this newspaper, and then you identify 30 as being local small business owners. Well, pull them out, write it down on an index card, create your spreadsheet, create your Google Doc, however you're going to do it. Doesn't matter how you do it, but you got to get a list ready to rock and roll. Now head to Google, head to LinkedIn, head to Facebook, head to Instagram, and find out, just search, what you're going to do is search the name of this business, Johnson's Plumbing as an example. We'll find out the name of the business owner, because what's probably happened is we're calling up and we're saying, can I speak to the owner? And we all know what happens when they hear that. What do you think? What do you think they're thinking, right? Well, and if there is a in some cases, there's the gatekeeper, and then sometimes you're just calling and you're introducing it that way, and they just know what's coming, so they give you the runaround, and basically just to get you off the phone, right? So, number one, come back to research. Like, do your homework, make your list, do your homework, and find out who to call. There's also something that's super important, and that's like, it comes back to psychology more than anything else. But when you call, I would be interested to know, like, what's the tonality, right? Like, just, again, a good example, a horrific example, not sure, but I tell you, if Steve Jobs called you, and of course that would be amazing because he's no longer here, poor bugger, but if Steve Jobs called, could you imagine what his voice would sound like? But he would just call up, and he would 1 zillion% expect to get through to the person he wanted to speak to. You know what I mean? He's not worried about it. He's not self-conscious. He's not, in the back of his head wondering this, that, and the other. He just call and say, hey, it's Steve Jobs. I need to speak to Karl Bryan. There would be no justification. There'd be no explanation, right? So, and believe me, the gatekeeper, when you talk it back, Chet Holmes, if you guys know who that was, he used to be in business with Tony Robbins. When they built Business Mastery, Chet Holmes was kind of the business, we'll call guru behind the scenes, right? So Tony Robbins was the psychology on steroids. Then Chet Holmes brought the business info. So they brought their two worlds together and built a killer program. And he often talked about, as he was the most, tenacious sales guy on the planet, arguably. And by the way, these are, that's basically the way he would describe himself, but he would talk about that. Like, when he phoned, he would just call in a very authoritative voice and expect to get through. And he used to sell, Charlie Munger, who's, Warren Buffett's business partner. He used to work for Munger for many years. He owned a publication, and then Chet Holmes was his number one advertising sales guy on steroids. So that was one of his keys to getting through, is that he would call with an authoritative voice with the psychology of expecting with 110% certainty to speak to Dave Johnson, the owner of Johnson's Plumbing. You follow me? So I'd say that it's, it's probably as much as anything what I just described is psychology, and then the other bit is research, but just expect to bloody get through. And don't expect, and then all of a sudden you get the marketing manager and whatnot. Like this is just not the person to speak to. Don't treat them disrespectfully, but just make sure that you're speaking to them in a manner in which you need to speak to who the boss is. And if you know who the boss is, it's going to be significantly easier to get through to them versus saying, so Lucy, who is it that runs this show? You know what I mean? It's a horrific way of starting it. Now, if you do start there, here's what you got to do. Go back to your index cards, your spreadsheets, your Google Doc, your CRM, however you're managing this database or managing these numbers. Now, write down when you speak to Lucy and you find out that the guy's name is Dave Johnson that you need to speak to, make a note, and then you can call him back. Believe me, she is not going to remember who you are. With 100, you could call back the next day and she wouldn't have a clue. She most certainly is not going to remember your voice. That much I absolutely guarantee. But realistically, you call back in a month or a couple months, now you've got the guy's name, right? Absolutely critical. So that's what I would say, man. That's absolutely critical. You do a couple of those things, psychology and a little bit of research to find out who is it you actually want to speak to. Because if you don't know who it is that you want to speak to, the chances of speaking to them are significantly diminished.
It's funny. I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately because I'm going to be doing a lot of calls this week myself. And what I find very interesting is just we want it to be easy. We want it to be quick. But I think by just taking the time and doing your homework and just spending 15, 20 minutes, maybe doing some searches online, I just think your life is just going to get significantly easier in terms of getting through to people and actually connecting with them.
Well, okay, I agree totally. And I would say take it one level higher. It's just that your psychology will be stronger because you did your homework beforehand, right? Like when you're calling Dave Johnson and you saw him on Facebook and you saw him on LinkedIn, you know that he's got 3 kids and he's owned this business for 12 years and that this is his marketing message and this is where he's advertising. I mean, that data is going to strengthen your, you know what I mean? This is the way to do it. It's again, like before I call, like, so if you own a plumbing company, as I just said a minute ago, right? Like we're calling Dave Johnson. If I've done homework before I speak to Dave Johnson on how to go about helping plumbing companies, once again, my psychology is going to be so much stronger to convince him to take the next level and to get into his office, to get him onto the phone and ultimately sell him my coaching and consulting. Is just incomparable to just making a blind phone call. Incomparable.
Nice. There's also the old school before and after business hours trick too, right?
Okay, Tim Ferriss, just talk about that. You're right. So between 8 and 9, so Tim Ferriss, if you ever read The 4-Hour Workweek, which by the way is an amazing book, it makes me laugh so hard when I see online with, I don't know, just you see it almost consistently where people are like trashing Tim Ferriss and The 4-Hour Workweek. And anybody who would trash that book, my opinion is that you haven't read it. You read the front cover and you think you know what it's about, right? You think it's about working 4 hours a week and being a lazy bastard. No, the book is about doing 40 hours of work in 4 hours, not doing 4 hours of work a week, right? But people read the cover, think they know it, and then they get all contrarian online like they're, some sort of intelligent or something bashing the book. And by the way, if you've read the book and you disagree with something, then fantastic. But disagree with that specific thing, not the fact that, he's promoting being a lazy son of a gun. So the 4-Hour Workweek, he talks about he had a sales job and he absolutely slayed it. And he managed to do it in 15% of the time of what the other guys did. So he was tasked with sales. So he would call business owners between 8 and 9. Don't quote me here, but you'll get the idea. I believe it's between 8 and 9. So before the gatekeeper got in, and then between 4 and 5 when the gatekeeper had gone home. And he would find that calling in those 2 hours, he would get more business owners and more decision makers on the phone than he would calling 8 hours throughout the day, right? So it's about being intelligent. So absolutely, Road Dog, and good point. And that's what Tim Ferriss did. And apparently he's doing all right.
Yeah, it turns out he's not exactly hard up for lunch money. So good for him. All right, let's get to the next one here. All right, King Karl, you talk a lot about social proof. How important is it that I use testimonials in my marketing? And by the way, when we talk about testimonials, I'm going to totally this pivot because I love throwing you kind of into, under the bus. not just testimonials anymore, case studies. I kind of see a lot more of this case study example. But in overall concept, what's your sort of theory, if you will, social proof and all that sort of stuff?
Well, okay, so look, yes, the answer is absolutely. In testimonials, I think that's kind of like people think of testimonials, they think of something that, the person wrote and then ask somebody, do you mind if I actually use this, that sort of thing? Or like if you ask your clients for a testimonial, they'll give you like a half page blah, 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 saying how great you are and amazing you are. And quite frankly, it's totally useless for your marketing. Really, like you said it, like, case studies, examples, stories. You absolutely need to have this stuff in your marketing, in your sales pitch, in your verbiage. In fact, you and I talked about this, Road Dog, at another stage, but here's an example of how people mess this up entirely. Okay, so let's say that you are a business coach and you want to do a local live event. In other words, you want to put 25 people in a room to watch you do your dog and pony show on how to build a business, and then they're going to buy from you at the end of it, right? Well, okay, so you do your marketing. How are you going to do your marketing? Let's assume you're going to use direct mail, social media, and maybe some advertising online and some phone calls, right? Well, let's just use direct mail, make it nice and easy. On the direct mail piece that you create, there should be some testimonials talking about the great job that you did. Tight, short, succinct testimonials. Where were they? What did you do? What was the result, right? You want it to be like 1 to 2 sentences so you can actually fit it on a direct mail piece. Once again, that half-page testimonial is completely useless in this dynamic, right? So, but here's the thing. So let's say that you were running, I used to call mine marketing boot camps, right? So the testimonial on my direct mail piece has to talk about, wasn't sure if I was going to come. He delivered 3 strategies. I implemented them and they tripled revenues and doubled my profitability within 12 months, right? Again, that's a little bit long, but you get the idea. I put that. The testimonial talks about my marketing boot camp because that's the next step. That's where I'm trying to get you to, right? So now you come to my marketing boot camp and I'm up there talking, and rather than testimonials, let's say that I'm telling stories or giving case studies from the front of the room. And then at the end of that presentation, my goal is to get you to what I call a sales and marketing audit, which is basically a 1.5 hour to 2 hour appointment where I'd go down, ask you a series of questions designed to disrupt you, and then you're going to buy my coaching, right? But the next step is what? Sales and marketing audit. So during the presentation, when I'm using my stories, my metaphors, my examples, using social proof of how I've worked with others and the results that they got, guess what I'm talking about? Sales and marketing audit, right? So they work with us, and then this is what happened when we sat down for a sales and marketing audit. So at the end of the presentation, I say, well, look, if you want me to find you $100,000 in 45 minutes without spending $1 on marketing or advertising, I'll walk you through what I call a sales and marketing audit. And at the end of it, you're going to be absolutely blown away. Do you want to do it? Well, they've just heard all these case studies and examples. And, and even if I have a workbook, on the back of the workbook, I would have a bunch of testimonials, right? Once again, really tight, succinct testimonials from business owners like the one sitting in the room, the realtor, the mortgage broker, the financial planner, the dentist, the chiropractor, right? So the testimonials need to talk about the sales and marketing audit. When we get to the sales and marketing audit, now what? There's testimonials there, and I'm using stories and case studies, and now I'm talking about a 12-month coaching relationship and how I took folks to the moon. You follow me? So there's a sequence of events. So the mistake that people make, instead of doing it the way I just described it, is you get their direct mail piece at step 1, and on it the testimonials talk about a 12-month coaching relationship and how amazing you are. And that's not the way to do it. You've got to have these testimonials and case studies, examples, etc., talking about the next the next step, the next logical step. Absolutely stinking critical. And by the way, so how do you do that? And you should learn how, it's copywriting 101, but you should learn how to write testimonials yourself and then help your clients with the way, like you got a client and they're like, my gosh, you were amazing. You changed my life forever. Of course, I'd refer you to anybody. We'll get them to write a testimonial, but you help them write it so that it's tight, succinct, and 1 to 2 sentences, so then you can actually use it on marketing material in the future, right? So the answer is absolutely, you've got to use, again, testimonials is kind of, there's a multitude of different ways of using social proof. But you've got to do it. Even like an example of social proof in like a platform sales environment. Platform sales. So if I'm at the front of the room, there's 1,000 people in the room, and then I'm trying to sell you, and you guys all stand up and walk to the back of the room and buy my program. That's called platform selling, right? Well, having 15 people in the audience that you know, who as soon as you're done, stand up and walk to the back of the room, like that's an example of social proof. And if you do that with 100% certainty, your sales will increase. Doesn't mean that the entire room's going to stand up and walk to the back of the room. But believe me, when you're done, if 15 people stand up and then walk back there, the chances of getting another 15 are significantly increased. But who's the hardest? The first person to stand up and go is the most difficult, right? So that would be another example. But that's a way that you would use this. Again, it's social proof. The answer is that you need it. You are crazy not to be using it. And not only that, but Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about storytelling. In fact, all the greats talk about storytelling. It's critical. I feel like Gary V probably does a better job of it than anybody. It's like, get clever with your stories so that they're stories of success, stories that they can learn from, but also stories of social proof and examples of success. You know what I mean? Like, you see how, and practice them. Like, the more that you tell a story, the better you're going to be able to get at it. And you should be telling. And if you go see Tony Robbins, he tells the same damn stories over and over again, and even cries at the same time, right? Like, I've seen Tony Robbins speak many, many times, and so often he's telling the same story, and then all of a sudden he gets a little bit teary-eyed, right? Again, I don't know. You could get annoyed by that, or you could understand the magic of it, right? So I would encourage you to find the magic and not the annoyance in that example. So social proof, Road Dogg, absolutely critical, brother.
Which, by the way, is always awesome when Tony's selling his platinum package for, like, how much is it? Like $80K or something like that. And it's just people are flooding to the back of the room. It's like, oh.
Not bad.
It's exactly like the tip jar example that you keep talking about too, right? It's that if it's empty, like, somebody's got to be the first, right? Yep. And that it's the exact same concept with that.
Let me explain. I want to make sure everybody understands that, because again, that is social proof on steroids. In fact, I wrote a tribute to Dan Kennedy, so it's going to, I wrote a tribute to Dan Kennedy, and what it talked about is the way that I pictured him picking up his first girlfriend, and it was basically, in true Dan Kennedy style, littered with social proof. So anywho, what it says is, if you walk into a cafe, there's probably going to be a pretty girl working there. If there's not, go to another cafe and you'll find a pretty girl very, very quickly at roughly the age of 18, right? And I think my dog's about to go and bark at the local takeaway. So anyway, so you walk into the cafe, and then the pretty girl is probably, she's going to have a tip jar there, right? It's probably going to say tip jar with, white paper and then taped on there, which is probably not the best idea. But anywho, so it's probably something like a coffee cup, and you can't see into it. And then she throws a few, nickels and dimes and blah, 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 and it's got whatever, but it's like 10% full. And then throughout the day, she constantly empties it. And the theory and the strategy behind it is that she wants it to make look it's empty so that people are going to want to fill it up for her, right? Like, in her mind, like, that's the way it should go down. So throughout the day, she's constantly emptying it to leave it at about 10% full, and you can't see into it, right? Well, what my story talks about, and what Dan Kennedy, I perceive him doing, is walking in, pretty girl, hey, if I could double your tips within a week, would you go to the movies on Sunday with me? And she goes, he blushes, all that sort of stuff. Really? You think you could do that? How are you going to do that? I'll tell you what, I'm going to do it anyways, but I really hope you'll agree to go to the movies on Sunday at 7 o'clock. Here's what you do. That glass that you've got is a coffee cup and covered, I can't see in it. I want you to turn that into a pint glass. Okay, in other words, a big glass. I want it to be see-through, like glass, not like a coffee mug. I want you to fill it. When you get here in the morning, I want you to fill it up 75% 75% full, and I want you to take some 5s and maybe some 10s, and I want you to put them in the middle and make sure that the people, those 5s and 10s are facing the people standing there. Okay. You will double your profits, and it's going to go from 75% full. You're going to start getting a lot more tips, so it's going to go to 90. Don't let it overflow. You want to keep it between 75% and 90% full, and constantly, do take money out, but leave it at 75%, 75 to 90% full. At the end of the week, you will have doubled your tips, as in profits, right? Like, that is social proof. So in other words, in fact, this literally happened on the weekend. My dad was here visiting me. And there was a gal, with a little, like, what do you call them? She's singing and playing the guitar. She's wearing a mermaid outfit, which
Buskers,
whatever, by the lake, right? Busking, that's it. So we're scooting by, and then we walked by, and I was like, oh, she looked like a sweet enough thing, and I didn't have any, I didn't think that I had any dough, but I didn't really check. I thought it'd be a good idea, but we kept walking. Well, all of a sudden, I looked over on my right, and my dad has disappeared, and he's over there putting a few bucks in the thing. And guess what I did? Just without thinking about it, whatever, I immediately pulled out my wallet to see if I had any dough. Why? To go up and give her some, right? It was like weird, but it was just, if my dad didn't do that, I would have continued to walk. But my dad did, and I automatically went, it's just social proof. It's the equivalent of the room with 1,000 people, 15 people standing up immediately and walking to the back, and all of a sudden another 15 join them. The exact same concept, right? And her tip jar, by the way, same thing. Next to empty, you want to make sure that it's, the opposite. In that case, she's got a big guitar dealio. And by the way, that's too big, so she shouldn't have, like they use their guitar case, right? That's not, you're not going to fill that up 75 to 90%, right? Not happening. Tip jar should be significant. It should be similar to the gal at the cafe. But so there's an example right there of social proof in motion. And by the way, that will work. So in this story, and you guys might have read an email or a blog post, something that I wrote about that, but it talks about if you get an 18-year-old, right? It doesn't matter how many pimples he's got on his face. Believe me, he's going to get a date if he does this continually, goes to a few cafes and meets some pretty girls. So not a bad way, if you got an 18-year-old son or grandson, there you go. There's a fabulous strategy for him, and it works with 100% certainty.
We're going to have to relabel this to business secrets / dating advice, I think.
Yeah, you do.
It's beautiful.
That's not too bad.
Is it awkward? Is it awkward King Karl walking down the street and it's like there's a busker and you're like, gosh, all I got is hundreds. Like, it's got to be weird, right? I just want to add in there as well, because a couple points. So obviously, if you're doing any online stuff, like there's actually a couple different sort of apps and programs out there where now you see it all the time, right? Like when you're making a purchase or you're on a sales page and the little thing pops up, so and so from wherever just purchased or just bought. Again, building that proof.
That's
right?
The same thing, 100%. Exactly. Right turn and the internet marketer, absolutely. Ping, 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 ping.
And then the other piece that I'll definitely recommend for anybody as well is it's one thing to get a testimonial, videotape it as well. If you can, just get a quick video. It doesn't have to be high production, but you can use and repurpose that on so many different levels for later. And if anything, you can just transcribe that. So, all right. So moving on, unless you have any other final thoughts on that. You're good?
Perfect, man. Let's move on from social proof, but it's critical.
Okay, so here's somebody, I'm super all caps, by the way, so it's real, passionate about coaching and helping people, but struggling to get momentum. So for a man who knows how to get his body in motion, which then keeps it in motion, what do you recommend for somebody that's struggling to build some momentum in their coaching business?
Okay, momentum, psychology, sadly, is just it. My question is, look, why are you doing, here's a good way to start. Back, Christian, I remember, like you and I, Road Dog, we sat down, and I remember having a conversation a little bit, like this over a beer. It was a few years ago now, but like we were talking about, what's your story? And you were adamant that, like, it's not that you didn't have a story, but you didn't, like, my story is my big brother committed suicide when I was 16 years old over a business failing. You could imagine that, like, on a visceral level, helping business owners is something that I do very, very organically, right? And, to say that I'm passionate about it would be understatement. Not to mention my brother also loved, like fast cars, and he loved to live well. He's a young guy, only 23, but again, he already at that age was very, very obvious, the direction that he was going and where he wanted to go. He just had that A-type personality, right? And if he would have lasted another day, I believe he would have lasted another 100 years, but this is just unfortunately the way the world works sometimes, right? There's nothing I can do. It was 1988, yada, yada, yada. But that's my story. That's why I do what I do. So when I talk to somebody and they go, they're not interested. If I talk to somebody and they tell me to F off and hang up the phone, it doesn't affect me in any way, right? So what I'd come back to is, why are you doing what you do, right? And believe me, you don't become a business coach and help people. Because let's face it, this is not a one-way street to make. As a business coach, you're not going to make millions of dollars as a business coach. The way that you'll make millions of dollars is through what you learn and the leverage that you learn through business coaching. In other words, not just coaching your clients, but learning from them. So, if you are a business coach, it's coming. There's a level that it's coming at that I would encourage you to go to. Let's put it that way. And as soon as I say that, and I've had this conversation a lot with folks, as a topic I've talked about, many, many times. It's just they struggle to go, I don't have that story like you have, right? It's you do, but you just haven't found it. You haven't gone to that ugly, ugly place. And if you want to know where to go, just go to your 3 most traumatic and most horrific experiences of your life. You're probably going to find it in and around there. But the bottom line is, why are you doing what you do? And now this comes to, you have to do it for them, not for you. If you're, let's just say you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call business owners today. If you're doing it for you, your coaching, your bank balance, your self-esteem, at the first hurdle, you're probably going to pack it in and just move on to something else, right? You're going to distract it, end up watching TV, go to your emails, go surf the internet, right? So you have to do it for them. Or again, a good example is when the kids have swimming on Saturday and you've got to get up at 5:30, shit, shower, shave, get to them. You know what I mean? You were up, you were early, the kids are 5 minutes early. It's a big gong show, but you get there on time and even early, right? It's your turn. You roll over and hit the snooze button, right? So you've got to do it for them. So I go back to, business owners are hurting. If you just look at the statistics, the statistics are horrific, guys. Folks are failing in business. And when you really understand it, and depending upon where you're at with your coaching career, you're going to see that the reason people are failing is that the roadmap that they're following and the psychology that they're using has got exactly zero chance of success and conversation over. What do they need? It's no different than, I coach hockey for a long time, and if you give me 13-year-olds, they jump on the rink and I throw 50 pucks on the ice, they'll all sit there and start practicing slap shots, right? They'll all try to hit the crossbar and make a cool noise. It's if you want to be a good hockey player, you've got to excel at skating. Well, nobody ever wants to work on the skating because it's not the sexy part, but this is the way you make the NHL. This is how you become a professional hockey player. End of story. If you don't have enough speed to get yourself in a position to use a slap shot, you're never going to get the chance to use it, right? So my way of saying, the average business owner is doing the equivalent. They're doing the sexy stuff, which would be social media, Facebook. They want to, fart around when they're, bring a photographer and get them to take photos of themselves and, create these quotes and this, that, and the other. Guys, that's not pick up the phone and help somebody, but coming back to do it for them. Make them the priority. Remember, these guys, they'll tell you to F off on the phone every once in a while, but then they hang up the phone, and guess what? They're actually telling themselves to F off, right? They are hurting. They are struggling. They're in the fetal position when they get home because, on their bed because they suck at what they're doing, or they feel like they suck at what they're doing. They're not making any money. The mortgage payment is coming, and they're sweating stinking bullets. That's why you phone them. And when you understand what we understand, finding somebody $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising, these types of techniques, the impact that you can have with these guys so quickly would blow your frigging mind. Something like, do you want fries with that? Do they have it in place? I guarantee that they don't. And if they don't, they're just missing out. If you have a lawyer, do you want a will with that? right? 90% of the population doesn't have a will. If you ever known anybody who died and doesn't have a will, it's a complete and utter gong show, right? So, make sure that these things are in place. So by saying, do you want a will with that? Is the lawyer doing the client a favor? Is the client doing him a favor by spending an extra number of hundreds of dollars to get it set up? And absolutely, the lawyer is doing the individual the favor, right? So anywho, so the bottom line is that if you're struggling to get momentum, with about 99% certainty, I'm going to say that you're concentrating on you. You're thinking about your balance, your bank balance, your coaching business, your self-esteem, your number of clients, etc. You've got to make it about them. And that's what's going to, bring you to picking up the phone. And then the deeper it goes, and that's where your story comes from. Like with mine, when my brother committed suicide over a business failing, again, it's just not a struggle, for me to pick up the phone, and then picking up the phone, and then somebody else is listening going, oh my God. And you can do this all on social media, etc. But it's everything that you do on social media and everything you would do at a networking function is designed to get somebody into a one-to-one appointment, either over the phone or face-to-face. So by just picking up the phone, all you're doing is expediting the process. End of story, right? And I know social media is the sexy thing and everything else, but the reality is it's a long-term play, 90 days at best, and you just have to accept that. So if you're willing to wait 90 days to get your coaching client, fire away on Facebook and Instagram. If you want a coaching client in the next 48 hours, pick up the phone and help somebody. Conversation over. Like just pick it up and phone them. And then, so there's a great saying that I love. Everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change the toilet paper, right? Think about that. The changing of the toilet paper is making those phone calls, impacting these folks. I often talk about, you don't have a client problem, you don't have a money problem, you have a refusal to help people before they pay you problem. That's the problem, right? So when you phone these people, don't phone them to sell them, phone them to help them. Phone them because you care. Again, open up the local newspaper, go to local ads, go to local websites, drive by a busy street where there's billboards, and just phone the businesses that have got, say, the advertisements in that local newspaper, the advertisements on the side of the road on the billboard, and just, before you do that, analyze, is this ad going to work? Most ads are blown up business cards, and if they're blown up business cards, it's just a total, utter waste of time. So the reason that you would phone them is not to get a coaching client. It's not to make a ton of money. It's to say, man, I saw that ad. I know that you're paying $500 a month, and I know that thing comes out 12 times a year, so I presume that's $6,000 a year you're committed to this. This ad, I don't have to ask you if it's working because I know that it's not. Do me a favor. If you got kids, take that $6,000 and get those kids to Disneyland because I think they'd probably really appreciate it. This comes from my heart. You know what I mean? Call them, make it a community service call, not a call to sell coaching. And when you call and you say that, when the guy's pissed off because he's spending all this money on this advertising and it's not working, and then you call and say, look, I don't have to ask if the ad's working because I know that it's not. This ad has no chance, right? What do you think that they're going to say, right? How do you think that conversation is going to go? And yes, once in a while, you're going to get told to F off, right? That's fine. So remember, when they tell you that, that's the person that needs you the most. Have empathy, not sympathy. Right? Most certainly don't go into, oh my God, poor me mode. Just go into, that's the guy that really, really needs to help you. So put them on your spreadsheet, put them on your Google Doc, put them in your CRM, and make sure that you follow up in 60 days with the same individual, because you get the same guy on the phone in a different mindset. And believe me, he won't be telling you to F off. You'd be it's just, the heavens opened and all of a sudden he's like, I can't believe you called me because I was just literally thinking that I needed some help in this direction. And I was just literally wondering if I was going to cancel that ad and, thinking that this thing's not working. I either have to change it or turn it off. And then you called me. This is amazing. That's what happens. But you've got to pick up the phone, and you don't do it once, twice, 10 times. I'm talking about committing to making, say, 20 phone calls every day. And a phone call isn't a voice message. A phone call is speaking to a person and having a conversation, right? And by the way, it's going to be hard, bloody work, especially as you start to accumulate more and more coaching clients. But that's just the way you do it. Or have a strategy where you'll never eat alone. Okay, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Phone a business owner that's advertising, just offer to buy them lunch, offer to buy them breakfast, offer to buy them dinner, and just sit down over a meal. There's something amazing. When you sit down and eat with somebody, there's a level of trust. It comes back to the Last Supper and whatnot. There's a level of trust that immediately comes with it. It's powerful on steroids. So make sure that you put food in the other person's mouth, and the connection will exponentially grow. And then just pitch them at the end. So look, I can help you do this. Right? And then, but do it 3 times a day. And maybe you're not going to eat all 3 with business owners. You're going to actually go home and have dinner with your family. So do every day, do breakfast and lunch. So these calls that you're going to make, remember, the question is, how do I get momentum? Right? So you're going to pick up the phone. Instead of selling everybody, you're going to phone and offer to help somebody. You're going to offer to buy them breakfast. And just before you do live events and get in front of 50 people, and maybe, because if you're asking for momentum, look, this is a beginner coach, to be clear, so that's who I'm speaking to here. But just pick up the phone and offer to buy somebody breakfast. Again, it's gonna cost you $30, and it could make you, like, a coaching client at $1,000 a month for 12 months is $12 grand. It'd be the greatest $30 you spent in many, many years, right? So that's what I would. Stuff like that. But think of my saying, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change the toilet paper, right? Picking up the phone and speaking to people is the equivalent of the toilet paper. You got to do it. Did I enjoy it? No. Road Dog, you just mentioned earlier. I mean, again, like your top, 15% of coaches probably on the planet, you're just talking about I'm going to be picking up the phone. Why are you picking up the phone? Not because you need to make a mortgage payment. It's not because you're trying to work out how to, pay for the girl's school. You're picking up the phone. Well, in fact, you tell me, but you're picking up the phone to friggin' help some people, correct?
100%.
That's it.
100%.
So that's how you get momentum. You don't, and by the way, don't overthink it. The more you think about it, the more it's not going to happen. So what do? It's like Tony Robbins talks about, don't go for a 30-minute jog. Put your running shoes on, right? Yeah. Like, that's how you go for a 30-minute jog. Because nobody ever goes for a 5-minute walk. Just put your running shoes on and walk around the block. And you'll find once you go around the block that you want to go a little bit further and that it feels good. And a little bit of extra oxygen through your body does the body good. In fact, like when I took on coaching clients, I would always what's the saying? I can't remember quite what the saying I have, but it's like, if you own your body, you have a significantly better chance of owning your mind. That's not quite it, but it's along those lines. So in other words, Road Dog, if you were my coaching client, I don't have any time to work out, right? Is that token response? And it's like, no, you can't not have enough time to work out, because when you work out, you're going to have more blood, more oxygen, more energy in your body. So therefore the 9 hours in your office are going to be 10 times more productive. So you can't afford not to work out in the morning. It doesn't mean you need to go spend an hour in the gym if that's not your style, but nobody can afford not to spend 15, 20, ideally 30 minutes with a little bit of cardio in the morning, and they will get so much more done. So that, again, getting momentum, own your body before you plan to own your mind. Because if you don't have momentum, that means that you're in your own way a little bit. Don't overthink this stuff, right? Just think and go and do it. So let's start with going for a walk, going for a little bit of a jog, maybe running up the hill, jump on your treadmill, go push a little bit of weight, and then just don't even think about it. Just grab the phone and start dialing. Right? That's it. So that's what that's how I would go about getting some momentum.
And you know what the funny thing is, speaking of momentum, and you know how I know that you don't go out for runs? Because you still call it jogging. I don't think it's called,
what are you
not called jogging anymore. But so just real quick though, back when I was in financial services, and I was working for a mutual fund company and wholesaling, we called those breakfast, lunch, and dinner, those were called anchor meetings, because you would get someone on the phone, you would try to book them, right? And if you had any resistance, you book them into an anchor, because they're always going to say yes, because no one's going to say no to a free meal. Like, it was the easiest meetings to book, but we always sort of kept that in our back pocket, just because there's going to be some people are going to be harder to book and sit down with. So that's, in that industry, we called those anchor meetings. And then real quick, I just want to add to the point of when people get all pissed off and then they swear at you or whatever, because you're calling them out on something that they're doing, you're challenging their ego, right? In terms of what they're currently doing. And what we probably don't know, Karl, and like you said, you got to be empathetic. I 100% agree with you, because guess what? They're probably desperate. They're probably having fights with their spouse in terms of, we can't afford to be spending all this money on advertising. And this guy is just like swinging for the fences to try and get that home run to do it. And he probably had a battle with his wife to get that ad up. And now you're challenging him. Like,
yeah, awesome point. Exactly. It's like the ad goes deeper. So again, be empathetic and come from a place of, well, look, let's sort this out. Let's start getting it. So if you're married to the ad, let's just make some adjustments. Again, like, as you know, Road Dog, right, with our process, like when you call somebody and say, hey, your ad sucks, your marketing sucks, that landing page is never going to work, your website's a dog's breakfast, we create a video that's like an hour long that's like called everything you ever learned about marketing is wrong. So you basically send them to that video, they watch it, it's about an hour long. At the end of that video, they've got their head in their hands going, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. Because basically we explain that if your marketing looks like this, which is a blown up business card, which is what most of it looks like, it's not that you have to run it for 12 weeks. It's like this wasn't going to work, this isn't working, and this is never going to work. So just stop it. Like, end of story, right? So the video, now all of a sudden they're like, holy smokes, right? And there's a level of power there where you direct somebody to a video and then they're watching a video without your presence, okay, but it's got your picture at the top, and they watch it. I mean, these people are all of a sudden very enthusiastic about speaking to you, right? They're 100% engaged. Well, that might be an exaggeration because it depends on the dynamic of the relationship, et cetera. But bottom line, that video does magic for taking the next step to say, okay, now I kind of get it. Well, now if they're totally married to the ad, they watch that video and you can say, well, look, let's do this properly. This is the way we have to do it, right? So,
do you think, Karl, it would be a good piece of advice now for, I guess, more or less our coaches, because we have access to that video. So instead of, again, looking at the outcome of just, hey, I need to get this guy at 1,000 or 1,500 a month, you're just simply going to make some calls to position, hey, I saw your ad, what I want, and all you're doing is selling them on sending them that video with a promise then after to then follow up with them to answer questions.
Okay, the answer, look, it comes back to what you were saying earlier, like there's a step, like I call you, my goal is not to sell you anything, my goal is to get you to the my live event, right? And I get you to the live event. My goal is to sell you a 12-month coaching. My goal is to get you to the sales and marketing audit. And then I get you to the sales and marketing audit. My goal is to get you to the 12-month coaching agreement, right? Step by step. So absolutely. In fact, I used to teach retail sales many moons ago. And basically what we do is we get you into the store. The first thing we had to do is get you to hold the clothing, right? So like I'd pull up a shirt. If I'm holding it and I'm the sales guy, it doesn't have anywhere near the power. I've got to put it into your hands and let go, right? There's a small amount of ownership. Once we get you there, our goal is to get you into the change room, not to the cash register, to the change room. When we get you into the change room, guess what our job is? To get you out of the change room, because often people don't want to come out, right? For, strange dynamics. Ideally, we would always have a man, like in a perfect scenario, we would have, a man and a woman close by. And they would always, provided if it looked like crap, of course, you know what I mean? The comments wouldn't come. But we would always get a guy and a girl to give them a compliment on what they were wearing. Wow, I really like that color on you. Wow, that really fits well. And you can normally tell by the way somebody is, you also see in their body language whether or not they like it. But if they don't like it, you don't say anything. And then you realize that you got to get them back into the change room and get something else on them. So now we got to get them back into the change room, and then we got to get them from the change room. We got to get them out, obviously. Hopefully they're going to sleep in there, right? We get them out, but now we get them to the cash register or to some. And by the way, while they're in there, hey, I know something. You know those jeans that you have? I have a shirt that looks amazing with it, or a blouse, or whatever it is, right? Do you want me to grab that as well? Oh, sure. Wow, right? Boom, put it on. Do. So, but you see the logical sequence. So the answer is yes, absolutely. Get them on the phone. And by the way, we talk about let's go back to momentum, right? Progress equals happiness. Those three words are life-changing. Progress equals happiness. So if you make some phone calls, remember the goal is momentum. It's not to make $300,000 in the next 3 months with your coaching, right? Because that doesn't come until way later. So what happens is you pick up the phone, you get some folks to your video, and then you get some emails back. You send out some emails. You have some follow-up calls for tomorrow, the next day. So now they're not all, what we'll call them introduction calls. They're stage 2 calls. Progress equals happiness. This is going to get you a little bit of momentum, even if it doesn't turn into a client immediately, right? But you've got some progress. So Road Dog, to your point, absolutely. And like I said, it's from a place of psychology that would be such a great, a great approach. So
yeah, and then the last piece to that, progress also then creates more confidence, which then in turn just continues more and more. The
result, yes. High five, bro. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, Matt. Well, let's wrap it because we were going to keep it short, and here we are. Funny how that works. But I hope that everybody found this super helpful in terms of some of the business strategies and tips. And worst case scenario, Karl just told you exactly how to be a retail clothing salesperson if the coaching doesn't pan out for you.
If the coaching doesn't work out, straight to the retail shop. Nordstrom's looking for some kick butt salespeople. Boom, bingo, bango, bungo. Okay, awesome. Road Dog, appreciate you, dude. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate you listening to the podcast, Business Coaching Secrets. If you guys like this bad boy, if you could do us a favor and give us a rating, leave us a comment, a review, always appreciate it. If you could share this guy on social, that's also going to be appreciated. So thanks so much for coming, and we'll see you next time on Business Coaching Secrets.
Make it a great week, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at Focused.com.